As conservatives, we seek to conserve 5 founding first principles. Constitutionalism, not a living constitution, the actual text of the genius of the framers and founders. The head of the Common Law Department at my alma mater, the Georgetown University Law Center, has suggested we move away from the primacy of the U.S. Constitution. This should be a bipartisan concern, and there are some Democrats that we can make alliance to and explain that Barack Obama's significant overreach in his use of executive authority could come back to bite the Democrats once we get a Republican in office, which we've now done. Number 2, economic liberty and property rights. Personal responsibility under a system of equality of opportunity, not of outcome. The Protestant work ethic is actually rooted in biblical principles of the individual made in God's image. We therefore become co-creators with God and are each responsible for the betterment of ourselves. Free market democratic capitalism, not crony capitalism, a la Solyndra, etc., that we've all learned is the Clinton legacy, is being challenged today by increasingly misguided socialism. The Democrats produced a Jewish candidate, I'm sorry to say, who won 22 state primaries as an avowed socialist. Satellites show Earth at night. They show the lights of South Korea and the darkness of North Korea. I think we all knew the difference between the glory and beauty of the democratic revolution in Central and Eastern Europe, led by President Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and of course the people of the Czech Republic and the former Soviet Union, etc., Poland. We knew the difference between West Germany and East Germany. So did East Germans. That's partly why the wall came tumbling down. And we knew the difference between Miami and what JFK would have described as Cuba, 90 miles away. It's not hard to make an objective judgment about which society lifts up human beings by the millions. Free market societies do. Since 1790, the average GDP growth rate in the United States has been 4% per year. Mr. Obama oversaw 8 years with an average growth rate of 1.5%, the worst economic performance over 8 years in American history. Number 3, freedom of conscience, religion, and speech. Increasingly opposed on campus from Yale, UCLA, by political correctness, indoctrination, intimidation, and illiberality. The Obama administration went after the Little Sisters of the Poor and the Hobby Lobby, seeking to redefine religious belief and liberty in our country. Our religious liberty, we believe, is not just personal, what you practice at home, but our religious institutions and businesses also merit freedom of conscience. What was done to Chick-fil-A, as an example. Democratic mayors across this country essentially sought to ban a business, which of course welcomes anybody through their doors, because they didn't like the personal political beliefs of the proprietor, the owner of Chick-fil-A. What was done to a waitress in Los Angeles, intimidating her. Or the head of Firefox, who dared express his point of view on Prop 22. I suggest you don't get fired in this country for being a conservative. Journalists gathered under Barack Obama to spin the news of the day They had a formal, organized effort not to be objective, but to present a bias. I'm going to reference a few books that I think you might enjoy. Kirsten Powers, How the Left is Killing Free Speech. Kim Strassel, The Intimidation Game. Bernie Goldberg's book, Bias. And Guy Benson, End of Discussion. I'm sorry I'm not feeling well today. I have something to share with you. Last week I was a kidney donor. Yes, thank you. I'm doing just fine, in fact 100%, but this is my first day sort of standing up, so forgive me for just a moment of catching my breath. I have a very close friend, he's very ill. We went through 11 months at the UCLA Medical Center. I could not be his direct donor, we're not a blood match. But by giving a kidney into a chain, he gets a kidney. Last night we found out that he gets one soon, on the 29th of this month after Thanksgiving. So I'm overwhelmed with gratitude on lots of levels to be with you in health, to know my friend will be saved, to know that actually my direct kidney donation worked for a gentleman who was on dialysis and doomed. A lot of blessings in my life right now, and I'll never forget being with you because this is my recovery day, so thank you for that. Thank you again. Number 4, the defense of freedom. This is my area of passion and commitment. Mr. Obama, who never wore the uniform of the armed forces, called our brave Marines corpsmen, and was totally unprepared to be commander-in-chief. He asserted he was a citizen of the world and set up a retreat of American leadership in a dangerous world. The Obama doctrine was hug thugs and offend our friends. On one issue, for example, human rights, an area where we're able to move some liberals our way, and explain to them that the Republicans are the party caring and human rights and standards and opposing tyranny and liberation. A letter was sent to Barack Obama early in his first term, signed by Lech Walesa and Václav Havel and 22 heroes of freedom in Central and Eastern Europe, who begged him not to forsake them or rush away from missile defense during our reset with Putin's Russia. Mr. Obama ignored the letter, of course. Mrs. Clinton's record was no better. She blocked the State Department from putting Boko Haram, the Nigerian kidnappers of the girls, from the list of international sponsors of terrorism, in order to foster the case that with the killing of bin Laden, the war on terror was over and no more threat from jihad. Mr. Trump is going to reverse Mrs. Clinton's policy, for example, which overthrew Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. At that point, our erstwhile ally, Obama consistently, Clinton-Obama doctrine, ignored Congress and set international foreign affairs and security policy. They turned Libya into a breeding ground for Islamist terror. They've not told the truth about Islamism, radical Islam. The Fort Hood massacre here was not workplace violence, it was jihad. Our nuclear policy has been sent by the president, the current president, to the UN. A nuclear arms race has been launched in the Middle East with the awful Iran deal. Why would Mr. Obama side not with the dissidents and freedom fighters in Tehran? Remember Neda, who bled to death in the streets, June of 2009? Why would he do the same with Cuba? We got nothing for his recognizing the communist government of Cuba. I'm not going to go to Cuba and give money to their dictatorship. When they're a free Cuba, I'll be glad to visit. Until then, I'm not going. Our military preparedness has been declining fast in terms of troop levels, ships, tanks, and planes. Our rules of engagement do not allow our troops to go after the enemy in a concerted way. What will happen different? What's the Republican agenda going forward? A reversal of all this. We're going to build up our military might and presence in the world. We're going to tell the truth about the enemy. We're going to stand by allies. We're going to be resolute in the war on terror. That's the big difference between Obama and Mr. Trump. Hopefully safe zones will be created for refugees and they won't have to flood into Europe in their numbers. Pity these poor nurses in hospitals in Germany and France and England. Millions of refugees come in with, by the way, exotic and different diseases and problems that they're not prepared for, and heroically they try to grapple with to be of service, and they're abused by these refugees who are unvetted, and are bullies, and mock Christians and secular even people, non-Muslims, the kafirs, right? Very concerning human rights challenge in Europe. Excuse me. And finally, number 5, accountable government, or what we call the public trust. 2016 was the year of revolt against the elites and failed governments and insider corruption and what we call government gone wild. The political class in DC failed the people. 6 of the 8 richest counties in our country now surround Washington, D.C. The Democrats have not been public servants. They've been pigs at the trough. They've been bankrupting our future, failing to organize reasonable entitlement reform, and I promise you, planting the seeds of a debt crisis that's going to change the standard of living of everybody in this room and our kids and grandkids. The GOP revolution was long in coming. The Tea Party, the defeat of Majority Leader Cantor, the rise of Ron and Rand Paul, inside the GOP was a revolution and Tea Party brewing, and the rebels won. The Democrats too saw voices of revolt. I could say revolting voices, but I won't say that. The recall of Greg Davis here in California was but one example. They too had a rebellion, but the empire fought off the rebels in the Democratic Party. Brexit was our tip-off that something miraculous was happening in the hearts and minds of average people, the average folk. And instead of denigrating it, like the Democrats did, Republicans took a lesson from it. Why should a farmer in Britain have to take demands from a bureaucrat, a socialist in Brussels, about what crops to grow? Why should the countries of Europe today have to listen to the socialists in Brussels about how many unvetted refugees they each take in? England redeclared its own independence. And Americans have taken their country back. The Democrat response to not even the partisan, just the honest concerns of the American people about what is happening in our country, morally, civically. You can't raise your hand on a college campus and offer a conservative thought without fear of your grades. The press is all lopsided and biased and unfair in their reportage. Academics are going to spend 50 years of their lives cocooned in sociology departments and archaeology and English and history and not interested in engaging ideas they don't agree with and growing therefore, but just safely in their safe spaces with pet therapy, if God forbid somebody says a Republican idea, a conservative idea, a first principles idea. Average Americans, including, by the way, God bless them, Reagan Democrats, and just hardworking folk in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin just decided the Democrats, calling them bitter clingers to their guns and religion, or lay deplorables, enough is enough. Do you hear the people sing now, Democrats?